editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the administrator of the Girlfriend Book Club. I'm so pleased to welcome all of you guys tonight to our monthly discussion. Tonight, you guys have chosen the book Hidden Pictures, and I'm so pleased that you did. There's 50,000 of you all now. And as I told the author a few minutes before this went live, it's a rigorous voting process to choose each month's book club pick. And it took about 2 or 3 days. And you chose Hidden Pictures. I'm going to hold it up here for this month. And I'm so glad that you did. So tonight, we're so pleased to welcome Jason Rekulak as to join us to talk about Hidden Pictures. So thank you, everybody, for joining, and welcome, Jason. Oh, I think you're on mute. Hey.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm thrilled to be here. I can't believe my book was picked.
Well, Publishers Weekly apparently called it paranormal perfection, right?
Well, they did, yeah. Yeah.
So that's a pretty big deal, right? So I'm just curious, before we get into the nitty gritty of the book, which everybody wants to get into, but I'm curious about you personally. I know you're in Philly now. You grew up in New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit just about your background and what your work life has been like at the last, when where you
Sure, yeah.
college, what you did?
I did, well, I mean, I've always worked in publishing, but I've always worked mostly at a small Philadelphia press that no one's ever heard of. So I don't really Quirk Books.
Quirk.
And so I don't have too much experience with, big New York City publishing. But at Quirk, I did work on a lot of illustrated books. Those are my favorite projects. I loved collaborating with photographers and illustrators and designers because I'm not good at any of those things, and so I always loved working with people who were good at those things. And so I worked on kids' books, I worked on cookbooks, craft books, all different kinds of books with visual elements. So it was always something I was really interested in. And I think, that interest eventually sort of spilled into, the book we're going to talk about tonight.
Wow. Okay. So before that, one more thing. So I know, when people read a book that they really love, and I know they really loved Hidden Pictures, they're always saying, what else has this author written? What else has he written? And I know you wrote The Impossible Fortress, which I have not yet read, but I would like to ask you if you can tell us a little bit about that book, because I'm guessing that people that are watching this tonight have read Hidden Pictures and they loved it. And now they're like, what else can we buy from this author? So can you tell us a little bit about your first big book? And I know it won many, many accolades and it was very well received, but can you tell us a little bit about what that was about?
Sure. Well, that was a pretty autobiographical coming of age book. And what had happened was my father had gotten sick. So I was going home all the time to visit him in the hospital. And so I was spending a lot of time in the ER with a notebook. And just to sort of, I don't know, help pass the time, I started writing down these little, I was writing down like memories because I was going home to like where my parents lived, where I grew up. And I wasn't really planning to turn them into a book, but then eventually I had like so many of them, I started shaping them into this novel called The Impossible Fortress, which, it's funny. I wrote it before Stranger Things, and it was published before Stranger Things came out. So it's like this crazy, insane, like 80s extravaganza, and full of like 80s pop culture. It's sort of perfect for the Girlfriend Book Club because it's like very much like about like Gen X childhood in the 80s. Right. These kids are going to the malls and, they're watching like The Breakfast Club and listening to Madonna. And after I wrote that book, I was thinking about, well, what do I do next? And like, publishers, they like you to pick a lane. They want you to like sort of specialize in things. So I'm like, well, I can't just write coming of age novels. Most people, you just do one and you're done. And now you got to do something else.
How many coming of age novels can you write?
Exactly. You can really only do one, or I can only do one. So then I was thinking and I've always loved suspense. I love thrillers. And so I was like, okay, I think that's where I want to focus, like a mystery, thriller, suspense, like that area.
So I saw that you went 20 years writing without publishing anything. I think you wrote a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
from what I read. But you didn't submit everything. I mean, and I know you were working for Quirk. So you're on the other side of it. You're looking at, from the publisher's viewpoint. So how did you break out of that spell? I mean, what happened one day to kind of get you from point A to point B?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I knew. So I think around the age of like 19 or 20, I sort of started. I was always writing when I was a kid, but like once I got to be like 20, I was like, okay, I want to seriously, like aggressively, like work at this every day. And so I did. So like no matter what kind of job I had, I would always find like an hour or like 90 minutes or 2 hours early in the morning or late at night to like work. But I never really liked any of the things that I wrote. Like I always felt like, and they were not good. Like I knew they weren't good,
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, I'm really sure. Like one of the big problems, I mean, what would happen is I would just sort of begin with a premise, and I would sort of chase that premise, and I'd write like 100, 200, 300 pages. And then eventually I would paint myself in a corner because I never started with an outline. I never had any idea where the story was going, because I thought that was the most like creative and like authentic way to work.
Yeah.
It's not true. Right?
Not true, everyone.
I mean, it works for some people. Some people do that. They just fly by the seat of their pants and they just make it up as they go along, and they're very successful. There's a lot of people who do it. But one thing I learned, I mean, the thing that really helped me working in publishing during the day is that I saw how other authors worked. And when projects would get pitched to me, like in their entirety, I would see the whole story, like in an outline form. And that was really helpful. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, I totally understand what this book is. And this author hasn't even written a word of it yet. They've just submitted an outline. They've told me the whole story in the same way that like a screenwriter will go into like a story before a word of the script is written. I would see novelists doing that. And that was like my big breakthrough. If I had just started thinking earlier about the book in its entirety and not just sort of writing as soon as I had like the germ of an idea, if I just stopped for a minute and said, what kind of story is this? Who is this book for? What is it about? I would have saved myself easily 10 or 15 years.
So how many years passed between the time you wrote Impossible Fortress and then Hidden Pictures?
Probably about 5 years.
Okay.
But I probably shouldn't admit this in an interview. After Impossible Fortress, I wrote a book that nobody wanted. Right? I had this idea for a book that was really ambitious, really long. And in hindsight, I was like, it probably was just like a little too out there for most people. And so, just a lot of people turned it down. And so,
because Impossible Fortress, I mean, that was like, it got so many awards and everything.
Well, it got nominated for the Edgar Award. It didn't win any. I don't know that it won any awards, but
that sounds like a big deal to me.
Well, no, listen, I was thrilled. But I was definitely feeling pretty like defeated by the time I started writing Hidden Pictures.
And I heard that, so getting to Hidden Pictures, because I know people want to hear about that. I heard that you came up with that idea just like walking down the street or something, right?
Well, I mean,
or is that a simplistic view of it?
No, it's true. I mean, what happened was, after writing, it's funny, I'll tell you, now that I've told you that I wrote a book that nobody wanted, after going through that process and writing that book, which took me like 2 years, the idea of writing another book by myself just seemed like so daunting. I was like, oh my God, am I going to do this again? But then I was thinking, I have these 2 friends who are both really good illustrators. And I thought, you know what, if I could do it again if I was working with them, right? So I wouldn't have like the isolation of like writing a whole nother book by myself. So I reached out to them and I said, hey guys, I have this idea. I want to write a mystery with illustrated clues, and I want you guys to draw the pictures. And they said, that sounds great. We'll draw the pictures, you write the words. What's the story? And I said, I don't know. I have no idea. But I did know that like, I knew that the pictures would be clues. I knew that I wanted some character in the story to be creating the pictures.
Right.
I wanted them to change over the course of the book so that they wouldn't have to draw the same kind of stuff over and over, and the reader wouldn't get bored looking at the images.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I knew was that since I worked in publishing, I was like, well, this book has to be like a black and white book. No publisher is going to print a full color novel. Those just don't exist. So whoever's drawing these pictures of my story is probably using a pencil or like maybe a black crayon, right?
Yeah.
So even though I didn't know the story, I had all these parameters. It was almost like writing a sonnet where like, I don't know what the sonnet's about, but I know like there's certain things that are like, there's like a form here that I have to now stick to. And then I spent about 3 months just coming up with a lot of really dumb, bad ideas that I just, really stupid ideas about like, wonder drugs that make you draw better. And, I was just trying to figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know who the characters were. And then
it really started with the illustrations.
But it started with these two people, these two illustrators.
Yeah.
And the idea of, the form of the book never changed. The idea that there would be pictures throughout that would be black and white, and they would evolve, and someone in the book was drawing them. That was like the impetus for it. And then it did feel like divine intervention. One day I was like, oh, well, what if it was supernatural? And then it could be a little boy, which would be really scary.
Right.
And then I was off and running.
So I just have to ask, so was there a character or a scene or anything about the book that was really kind of difficult to write that didn't come to quite as natural as maybe the other parts of the book? Mallory or Mitzi or, any of the characters, or I'm just curious, was there a certain character or any dialogue, anything that was really sort of, okay, the rest of this is pretty easy, but this is a little bit tricky?
Not really. I think the ending was a little tricky to figure out because I knew how I wanted. We can talk about spoilers, right? Like, can I assume?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
People, yeah.
So I always thought, one of like the little things I tried to weave through the book was lots of fairy tale references. So I was always referencing, like they reference them overtly and like more subtly. Like when Mallory comes home and finds Ted in her bed, like I'm thinking of Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Bears, And other times they're literally talking about fairy tales, Brothers Grimm, and they talk about Wizard of Oz. And so I always felt like this book has to end with these two characters who are almost like siblings by the end of the story, running into the woods, being chased by, a witch, because that's the way fairy tales end. It should be like Hansel and Gretel or something. But I wasn't sure all that was going to happen. I didn't know how to get everybody there and then like tie up all these loose ends. So I was a little nervous about it. But then I was actually, it's weird. I was at the beach with my family, like on a family vacation, when I never expect to get anything done, because all my relatives are there. And, but I got up early one morning and I went out on the boardwalk and I sat on a bench at like 7 a.m. And I remember figuring it all out. And so that was probably, I guess that was the hardest thing. Just trying to figure out
the ending.
Yeah, like the last 70 pages or so.
Yeah, because you said you don't write with an outline, right?
Well, no, I don't write with an outline per se, but I did know, like, as I wrote, before I even started writing a word of this book, I knew all the secrets.
You did. Okay.
I knew that
you didn't change anything in the middle of it, or when you're.
No. So I always knew like the parents were the antagonists. I knew the ghost was looking to Mallory for help. I knew Teddy was really a girl. And that actually made writing the book really easy because I wasn't chasing a lot of false leads and, wasting time. I was always writing toward a very clear ending.
So this is your second big book. So did you have your wife? Did you have your friends? Were people reading this behind you, like as you were going through this, or do you have people, or do you just write it and then you send it to the publisher and that's it?
Well, it's interesting. So I wrote all this in 2020, right? So this was during
the pandemic.
During the pandemic. So pretty shut down. And what I would do is I would give stuff to the illustrators. And because I would be like, okay, well, I need a picture of a man dragging a body through a forest, and it needs to look like it's drawn by a 5-year-old. And So they were definitely like my first readers. They were reading the stuff and commenting on it. And sometimes they would just tell me things about their process that I would steal and put in the book. Like, for example, one of the things they did to emulate drawing like a 5-year-old, they're both right-handed, but they would draw with their left hands
Yeah.
to sort of like handicap themselves.
Yeah. Good idea.
And I was thinking about that, and then that I actually pulled that like that detail into the novel. Like we learned that like Teddy is left-handed, but when he's possessed by the spirit, he actually uses Anya uses his right hand to draw because that's how she draws.
Right.
And that's just something I lifted from them, and that happened a lot. They had a lot of good ideas.
So again, which character was the easiest to write? Mallory?
Yeah, Mallory's pretty easy to write. That's a voice I feel comfortable writing. Like that sort of South Philly blue collar, first person voice. I felt pretty good doing that. I know a lot of people like Mallory.
And Springbrook, you said that was based on an actual town in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, when Mallory goes over the Ben Franklin Bridge, she goes to this bucolic suburb, which is it's called Springbrook in the book, but it's really Haddonfield, New Jersey.
Okay, everybody from that town.
Yeah, Haddonfield, Cherry Hill.
Be proud, everybody.
They will know it already because Mallory crosses a highway to go to the Cheesecake Factory and the Wegmans. They know exactly where I'm talking about.
So tell me, so briefly, I mean, you worked at Cork, you were on this other side of the game, really. You were reading manuscripts, you were finding authors for ideas. So can you tell us a little bit about that time and how different it is for you now? You're on the flip side.
Yeah. I mean, working at Cork was great because it was a really challenging job because we were a super tiny press. It was 20 people. So it was impossible to compete with HarperCollins or Simon and Schuster. You just couldn't do it. You didn't have the budget. So what we did was, I spent a lot of time looking for like just talented writers who didn't have anything published, but had like talent and had potential. And then you would try to find like the right vehicle for their talents, what should they be working? What are they interested in? What should they be working on? And I really enjoyed that. It is a really satisfying job because when people would become successful, like that feeling was exhilarating,
And I think you helped a lot of people on to success, right?
Yeah, we launched. I mean, I think by the time I left, there were like 12 or 14 like New York Times bestsellers, and all of them. I don't want to say all of them. Almost all of them was their first published book.
Wow.
But I find that like, I don't know about you, but like I meet so many people who are talented, and they just haven't figured out a way to like monetize their talent.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you see with musicians all the time. Like I'm like, oh my gosh, this person is so talented. Why aren't you famous? And it happens with writing too. Like if someone's such a really good writer, but maybe they're not like totally aware of like where the market is right now, and they're focusing on Westerns, and it's like, well, okay, that's going to be like an uphill battle, because like try to find like a Western in a Barnes and Noble right now. I mean, I think if you went out west, you could find them.
But weren't you maybe? Were you not thinking about yourself during that time too, thinking I could actually do this, or I could make myself successful in some way?
Well, I was, but I mean, when I was most successful, I was thinking about the person I was talking to, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what are their strengths? What are they good at? And what could I do with them? And so it was, I missed the job. Actually, I loved it. It was, because again, it was collaborative. You're working with people all the time. And when the books blew up, it was so exciting. So
what's been the reaction from your family and everybody? I mean, I know this is your second book, but I mean, are people thrilled? I think did Netflix option this book? Is that right?
They did, yeah. They have the rights. I wrote an adaptation for it. And I'm sort of waiting to hear what's going to happen next. I suspect they're going to change my script a lot because it's a pretty faithful, like pretty literal adaptation of the book.
Yeah.
And they say There's sometimes, sometimes the literal adaptation is not the right way to go.
But I mean, how exciting is that, right?
No, it's super exciting, super exciting. So I'm crossing my fingers for that. But otherwise, I mean, nothing has changed inside my house. I mean, like like day-to-day life, my kids,
That your kids are not treating you any differently?
No, no, no. So I'm still dad. And
Are you writing full time now, or is this?
I am. Yeah. No, the success of this has allowed me to do that. So I have another book I'm doing for Flatiron, and
well, I was going to ask what's on your agenda next, but I didn't know if you would be able to tell anything.
Well, I mean, I can just say like it will be another suspense.
Yeah. Now you're in your lane. Okay, Jason, stay in your
exactly. Lane. No, that's exactly right. It's like you can't go off now and write a science fiction novel or something like that. But that's great because I love suspense. I love thrillers. It doesn't even have to be supernatural necessarily.
Yeah.
Like you can just. But
so what's your writing process like now that you're writing full time? You've got your kids. I'm guessing they're in school now with the pandemic over. But I mean, do you wake up at a certain time and say I'm going to write for 4 hours, break for lunch, and write for another 4 hours, or what's your process like?
Yeah, I mean that is pretty much like my daughter has to be out of the house by 7:10, I think. So
that's early.
She pushes it sometimes, like but so by 7:30, like she's off to school, and so I'm ready to go. Like I'm already awake. We've already like had an argument about lunch or whatever. So I'm like full of adrenaline, and so I'll go I usually go to the library. There's a university library. That I'll go work in. It's nice and quiet, and I'll usually work there till about 12:30. I'll try to like write in the morning. I turn my phone off. Don't look at my phone. Try not to look at the internet. And usually I can accomplish like in that time like everything I want to do for like the day. Like if I can like write 1,000 words or 1,500 words, then I feel like okay, good job. And then in the afternoon, sometimes I'll try to like write a little more but then there's like other things that you just have to do, like answer emails or like business stuff. One thing I'm doing right now is like I get these requests for book plates, like autographed book plates. Like I'm signing a lot of those and like mailing those, going to the post office, back and forth. So I try to do like administrative stuff in the afternoon.
So I just have to ask, I've only got like 3 more questions, but with Hidden Pictures, I mean, I was Googling you today and you've been interviewed 1,000 times about Hidden Pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, are you finally kind of ready to like, let it go? Like, goodbye, Hidden Pictures. Let's move on to the next project.
I am.
I would imagine you are.
I mean, well, I'll tell you, here's the thing. The book came out in May.
Yeah.
It had no reviews. I mean, Publishers Weekly reviewed it, and Kirkus, but like these are like magazines that like no real people outside of publishing ever see, right? Like no one ever sees Kirkus. But so outside of like those kinds of things, there were no reviews. But the internet just sort of like glommed onto it, and so I would get like these people that are like, we're reading this for our book club. It's like 8 of us in Arizona or something like that. Will you come talk to us? I'm like, of course I will. No one else wants to talk to me. I'll come to your book club.
That's funny.
And then you get another request, and it's word of mouth just gets around, and that's probably why I got voted for this club, because like online, like the Facebook, Instagram stuff has been fantastic.
Truly unbelievable. Yeah.
So,
well, congratulations. So just like 3 more things because we're running out of time. So what are your favorite books of the last year, or what author or authors have inspired you this past 12 months or so?
Oh boy. Well, I do like, there's this guy, Kevin Wilson. He has a new book that just came out last week called Now Is Not the Time to Panic, but his previous book was called Nothing to See Here. There's a big.
I know Nothing to See Here, but I've
Yeah,
heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, Nothing to See Here
Okay.
was great, and his new one just came out. So I just got that. I haven't read it yet, but I'm
Is that
excited about it.
suspenseful or what? Mystery?
No, it's this one actually seems like it might be kind of like it's about teenagers. So I don't know that
Really?
it's necessarily a coming of age novel, but it's definitely about two teenagers.
Huh.
Um, I'm a big fan of a Philadelphia writer named Liz Moore. She wrote a book called Long Bright River
Okay.
about it's about this cop, and it's about like the painkiller problem that we have here in Philadelphia with prescription painkillers and opiates and heroin in Kensington. Really good thriller, Long Bright River by Liz Moore. And I also like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, the Gabrielle Zevin book.
Yeah.
That, you know,
I've heard a lot about that book.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was a computer programmer in high school, and that book is
I read about that. Yeah.
that book is all about computer programmers, like in the '90s. So, you know, I felt like that was written just for me. Like I understood all those references.
Yeah. So I just have to ask, let's see, what you're working on now. You're working on something, but you're not going to talk very much about that. And then finally, I just have to ask, I mean, so when you're not, writing and reading and all that stuff, and I know you have a family, but what do you like to do for fun when you have some time off?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a mountain bike. I like to go mountain biking a lot. There's a lot of good trail. You wouldn't think Philadelphia would have a lot of trails, but we have like some really good parks with good hilly trails. So I do that for exercise. I do bike all over the city also.
Really?
Philly's a great biking city. We have a lot of bike lanes.
Yeah.
So we've two rivers, so I can bike along the river. So, you know, if it's a nice day, like that is my favorite thing to do. Like on a Saturday or something, I'll go bike for like 3 hours. I'll go past like the art museum, and we have like all these boathouses and things like that.
That's
So
great.
that's
That's
favorite
good.
activity. Yeah.
So one more thing. So with Netflix, like looking at this now, I mean, do you have any actress in mind for Mallory? I just have to ask.
I do. Well, I have a crazy idea. I don't know if this is a good idea because I don't know if this person can act.
Well,
But
tell us.
so and Gen X listeners will appreciate this because I feel like in the 1980s when Madonna was like in a movie, it was a really big deal because it was
Yeah.
Madonna, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't matter what the movie was; like you were going to go see it because Madonna was in it.
I know. I grew up during that time.
Yeah, exactly. So, Desperately Seeking Susan, I don't
Yeah.
care
Oh,
what it's
yeah.
about. Madonna's in it. We're going. So my idea for Hidden Pictures is that Billie Eilish, I don't know if she wants to act at all, but if she did, like the book is like, it's so much like her vibe, like
Yeah.
the vibe of her
I agree.
music. She's the right age for it. It's a creepy book. Her stuff is kind of like dark and goth, and she could write the theme song for the movie, like
She could.
Hidden Pictures, the song that they play over the credits. And so that's my
Your dream.
outside the box idea. I'm gonna say it's my dream. It might be a terrible idea because
I
I
think
don't
it sounds
know.
like a great idea.
I
It
don't
must
know if
be
she
fun.
can act. I
It
don't
must
know if
be
she
fun.
wants to act.
Yeah, it must be fun for you to like just even entertaining these notions right now. It must be really fun for you.
Yeah, it is. No, it's been a really exciting year. It's been crazy.
So,
So
well, thank you, Jason, so much for joining us tonight. I mean, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed Hidden Pictures. Everybody, buy it. That's why I wanted to mention your first book because I wanted everybody to know that you wrote something before this so they
I
could
appreciate
also
that.
grab that as well.
I hope they do.
So, everybody, thank you so much for joining. As always, tonight, after we log off of this interview, I will be posting about 6 conversation starters on the Girlfriend Book Club page so that you guys can talk about the book and what you liked about it, things you might have questions about, whatever. So again, thank you, Jason, and
Thanks,
have a great.
Sean.
I appreciate so much that you joined us tonight. So thank
Yeah,
you so
no,
much.
this is a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck